Hey Guardians, I just want to let everyone know that I do have both a Twitch and a Twitter, and I'm very active on both. Feel free to come give me a follow on both, links in the description. So Bungie had a dev stream today that was talking about a little bit about some of the stuff coming in Revenant, and it also previewed a new armor system coming. Now the stream I just have a few notes on that I'll talk about briefly. There isn't a whole lot there that I saw that really hyped me up, but we'll talk a little bit about that before jumping into the article talking about the new armor system, because this is a pretty big change. So first off, a couple quick notes from the stream. Onslaught is being further developed, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. We're getting, more enemies in Onslaught, and we're getting some new arenas, so on and so forth. But just being honest here, unless we get, more gear that we can get from Onslaught, then I just don't really care. Onslaught was fun for like the first few weeks, but it is an activity that does tend to get repetitive fairly quickly. But on the bright side, Onslaught would be the perfect place to reintroduce more in the way of, old weapons, kind of like they did before, such as, Kindled Orchid, maybe Dustrock Blues, weapons like that. And it would be a good place to introduce some new weapons every now and then, such as, Elsie's Rifle, Legendary Pulse Rifle, based on an exotic from D1, yes, but in D2 it is essentially a new weapon. Now, next up, the new seasonal weapons will not be craftable, which is a massive L. Something that I've noticed is that I would say pretty much everyone I see who hates crafting, they are almost always PvE mains, which, by the way, this video is from the perspective of a PvP player, so PvE mains need not apply. But of course that makes sense, because in PvE, realistically, you only need like a 2 out of 5. As long as you have a good combo in those last two columns, that's all that matters. That is not the case inside of PvP. Inside of PvP, we have to be worried about barrels, magazine, masterwork, and those last two columns. But in PvE, even for endgame content, right, like raids, GMs, so on and so forth, a 2 out of 5 is pretty well going to do you just fine. So yes, of course, the PvE mains with a crippling gambling addiction are completely fine with not being able to craft these weapons, because they don't have to run the same repetitive seasonal activity over and over again for hours, because they only need a 2 out of 5. So just being honest, not having the seasonal weapons be craftable does hurt my interest in the new seasonal stuff quite a bit. Next up, the artifact has a ton of stasis stuff going on with it. And as you all know, I hate stasis in PvP. Like if I could remove one subclass from the game, it would be stasis. Stasis would be gone and it would never come back. I do truly think stasis is one of the worst things to ever happen to PvP. So if the artifact mod really juices up stasis inside of PvP, this will honestly likely be my least played PvP season pretty much ever inside of Destiny. Outside of that, they showed a new exotic, which is a primary GL, which I guess can spawn heavy ammo or something like that. There was also, I believe, someone using a chest piece that also enhances, I think it was Bleak Watcher on stasis, so hopefully that won't be too annoying in PvP. And they did show one kind of interesting thing, which is it appeared to be a like 2-round burst, I think, slug shotgun, which is interesting. I will be curious to see how that works in PvP. But outside of that, we're getting a new skimmer. We saw, in some artwork, a preview of the new armor. That looks pretty cool. Apparently, some old activity that, was much loved by the community is going to be coming back. There's been a lot of speculation on that. Of course, on Twitter, a lot of people were theorizing it would be SRL, Sparrow Racing League. DMG nipped that right in the bud. Sparrow Racing is not coming back next season. So there have been other theories, maybe Court of Oryx, Prison of Elders, so on and so forth. My guess is probably Prison of Elders or something similar to it. We'll just have to see. Outside of that, not a whole lot there that caught my eye. So let's move into this article, which is talking about this next generation armor that they're doing, which I don't believe is hitting with the season. I can't remember from the stream, but I don't believe this is hitting next season. I believe this is a while out, but let's take a look at it. And of course, if I'm incorrect on that, feel free to correct me in the comments. But welcome to one of many developer insight articles for Codename Frontiers. Over the weeks and months to come, we will be covering a lot of different topics about changes coming to Destiny 2 next year with these deeper dives. Check back with our Paving the Way for New Frontiers articles for more information on our plans and an always updated list of these articles as they are published. Compared to weapons, armor has been a relatively unexciting reward for a few years now. In the year ahead, we will be introducing new properties to armor and changing how stats work to make it easier to change armor around. TLDR, armor will be a more active, interesting part of build crafting. Stats will be reworked to be more impactful, less confusing, and less constraining. And set bonuses will be introduced to give individual armor sets more unique identities and build crafting elements. The problem: in the years since the last major update, Shadowkeep's Armor 2.0, armor has settled into a relatively static part of the reward story. Once you have the right roles, there is very little else to look forward to, and the intricate balance of stat values has a lock-in effect that makes it hard to want to swap anything out anyway. For armor to be exciting again, it needs some unique properties, and stats need to be easier to manage without so much need for fine-tuning. The solution: reworked stat mechanics. Stats on armor will be changing in Codename Frontiers in order to make them more player-friendly. The first major change is the mechanics of the stats themselves. Stats effects will no longer be tiered every 10 points. Every point in a stat will provide a benefit. This change is intended to reduce the lock-in effect that happens when a fine-tuned combination of stat values makes it feel impossible to switch out any single armor piece. And 2, stat effects will be capped at 200, with the range from 101 to 200 providing an additional powerful effect building on the base effect. This change is intended to support deeper investment in a smaller number of stats and spikier stat distributions on armor with fewer secondary dump stats. In addition to the above changes, the distribution of stats on armor will also be changing. 1, legendary armor will have a stat archetype which determines the primary and secondary stat types, and a third stat being a free roll. The values of these stats should be overall spikier, leading to fewer points in dump stats. 2, the class slot, Hunter Cloaks, Warlock Bonds, and Titan Marks will have full stat distributions on par with other slots. That right there does sound pretty interesting. It sounds like maybe class items will have their own roles now instead of, just being, having essentially dead stats minus whatever mods you put in there, so that could be interesting. Now you can see the graphic here. Presumably most of these are placeholders, but I do notice here hand cannon loader, improved hand cannon dexterity. I really truly hope we are not going back to this system. To be honest, I actually much preferred the elemental system as far as weapon mods go, meaning, solar loader, stasis dexterity, kinetic unflinching, so on and so forth. I do genuinely prefer that to this old system that we had, because having weapon specific mods was something that we had previously, and it was actually pretty annoying because some were just way more expensive than others. I hope this isn't the case, but I guess we'll see. Other than that, you can kind of see the archetypes they're talking about here. So this is brawler armor, primary stat strength, secondary stat discipline, tertiary stat intellect. So this looks interesting thus far. I'm still not really sure how to feel about it. Looking at how this works, my gut is telling me this could actually end up being even grindier than what we have now for armor, but we'll see. Moving on, the result will be a smaller number of unique stats on any piece of armor with larger contributions to these stats and every stat point providing a benefit. These changes should ultimately make every piece of armor more interesting and easier to evaluate. New stats. Some stats will be changing with 3 goals in mind. 1, improve specific weak stats that offer little value, hopefully mobility is in there. 2, reduce or eliminate mandatory, quote, must-have stats, close quote. 3, overall improve understandability of stats and their effects. These changes are still under active development, but here are a few examples from work-in-progress designs, which will eventually include most or all of the current stats found on armor. Discipline from 1 to 100 provides increasing grenade cooldown reduction. From 101 to 200 provides an increasing chance to gain a bonus grenade charge when whenever your grenade becomes available. Stat renamed to grenade to improve readability. Strength from 1 to 100 provides increasing melee cooldown reduction. Yeah, so this just kind of repeats here. It's just, strength from 1 to 100 provides increased melee cooldown reduction. From 101 to 200, you get a chance of just having a bonus melee charge, right? And then, of course, the stat was renamed to melee. Now, this next one is one that I'm particularly worried about. Special ammo is apparently a stat now. So from 1 to 100 increases rate at which special ammo bricks drop from final blows. From 101 to 200 provides an increasing chance that a double-sized brick will drop. This I'm not excited for, because either this does not work at all inside of PvP, or the special ammo situation is going to be worse than it is even now. And as we know, presumably they're still planning on bringing back the ammo meter, and my main concern there is that this stat will affect the recharge rate on the ammo meter. So again, from a perspective of a PvP player, I do not care about how this affects PvE. From the perspective of a PvP player, this is bad. This is a bad move. This is going to be a nightmare. Moving on, set bonuses. The second major change to armor is the introduction of set bonuses. Think of them like an origin trait for armor. They'll represent the theme of the armor and allow you to reflect that fantasy in the way your build plays. Set bonuses are perks granted when you equip 2 and 4 pieces of armor from the same set. This allows you to either commit to 2 bonuses from the same set or find combinations that fit your unique needs. We're keeping both approaches in mind as they take shape and are excited to see what each Guardian chooses to do with these new tools. Note that there is no bonus at 5 pieces because most builds are expected to include a piece of exotic armor. As you'll see, perks will consist of either existing mods or will be newly designed. We've included a few examples below that represent the general direction we'd like to go. So here are the examples. Theme, Text Mechanica. Perk 1, 2 pieces. While shooting from the hip, you have increased movement speed and weapon handling. Effect increases when you score hits. Perk 2, 4 pieces. Text Mechanica weapons have increased range and accuracy when hip fired. Next up, theme, non-stop aggression. 2 pieces of armor, final blows with freshly reloaded weapons heal you. And then perk 2 with 4 pieces, damaging a target with a shotgun or fusion rifle increases the damage it takes from those weapons for a short time. Next, theme, demolitions expert. Direct hits with explosive weapons temporarily increases their reload speed. Perk 2 with 4 pieces, repeated direct hits with explosive weapons temporarily increase grenade ability damage. Then lastly, theme, Vanguard Operative. Activating your grenade gives you and nearby allies damage resistance against combatants. That's with 2 pieces of armor. And with 4 pieces of armor, defeating champions with a finisher generates special ammo for you and your fire team. So coming away from the article for a second, I am very curious to see how these two turn out. These first two sound like they could be really interesting, potentially maybe even a little broken inside of PvP, such as non-stop aggression, great for aggressive play, but final blows with freshly reloaded weapons heal you. I mean, there's already so much dumb, healing and, second chance stuff in the game, overshields, healing grenades, healing rifts, phoenix dive, worm husk, so on and so forth. I really don't think we need any more of that sort of garbage inside of PvP. So we'll just have to see how these turn out. The Text Mechanica one seems interesting. 2 pieces while shooting from the hip, you have increased movement speed and weapon handling. So obviously that's for, Last Word fans, presumably DMT fans. 4 pieces Text Mechanica weapons have increased range and accuracy when hip fired. So that's probably great if you want to try to run some weapons from Spire of the Watcher. If there's a set that increases my weapon handling, like across the board, then that is one that I would, personally be really excited for. But we'll see. I have a feeling, unfortunately, these are almost certainly going to become a problem inside of PvP, either right away or maybe further down the road. These, at some point, there's going to be some combo that completely breaks PvP. And honestly, the same could be said from this, from, a stat that boosts an ability from 101 to 200, an increased chance to gain a bonus ability charge. I don't like that at all. Like, PvP is already ability spam hell. We don't need to make it easier for abilities to have a higher uptime inside of PvP. Now, if we still had that old, 50% ability cooldown penalty from when we first got Checkmate, probably wouldn't be that bad, but in the current sandbox, this is going to be a nightmare. Straight up, this is going to be awful. I expect this right here, I expect to become a problem overnight. Very genuinely. But we'll have to wait and see. I hope to God this does not function inside of PvP, but I don't have enough faith in Bungie to believe that it will not function inside of PvP. I fully expect that this will be something that functions in PvP and it will become a problem almost immediately. But we'll see. Maybe they'll surprise us. I don't expect them to. Now, moving on to FAQ, what happens to my old armor? Old legendary armor will be changed as little as possible, but because the change to stat mechanics and types are global changes, old armor pieces will have their stats types, but not their values changed around. When possible, these changes will be to the most similar stat, but with some stats being fundamentally reworked, this won't always be possible. And what about exotic armor? Updating the exotic armor pursuit is on our roadmap, but won't be part of the initial update that is focusing on legendary armor. So, to make sure that exotics and their build-defining perks remain a compelling option, we are working out a design that will allow players to update their exotic armor to bring their stat bonuses in line with the changes to legendary armor. The exotic class items introduced in the final shape are a special case. Even though legendary class items will be gaining full random stats with this update, we don't wish to add additional randomness to the exotic class item chase. Instead, we will be providing a method for players to update their existing class items with additional stats of their choosing to bring them in line with the stat contribution of new legendary class items. More details on the longer term plans for exotic armor coming as we nail them down. Then lastly, my vault is full. Where am I supposed to store all of this new armor? We know that vault pressure is a real problem for many players, even with recent increases in vault space. Outside of adding more space, an option, real solutions that enable long-term storage of more desirable roles are really hard problems. But those are the problems we're penciling into our roadmap at around next year's second expansion, codenamed Behemoth. We'll share more details when we have a clear direction for how we think we can solve this one. So, again, from the perspective of a PvP player, I'm really not very excited for all this. One, armor grind sucks. Legendary weapon grinds, encounter farming, so on and so forth, that's awful. But armor grinds are so much worse. Listen, I already hate having to sit on a master grasp checkpoint for 8 hours to get armor I need. I am not excited at all to have to go through the armor grind all over again. And on top of that, the new stat changes, set bonuses, all that, this is going to be a nightmare in PvP, and I think it will probably become a nightmare pretty much overnight. So as far as all that goes, I'm not super excited. I'm really not, just being honest here. We'll see what happens. Again, hey, maybe Bungie will surprise us. I don't expect them to. It's starting to feel like they've just kind of given up on PvP and just thrown, any real semblance of balance just, out the window completely. We were starting to kind of approach that point with some of the stuff we saw in Checkmate, that sort of thing. And that is all pretty much gone now. We're back to a hard ability spam meta. Special ammo is everywhere. Heavy ammo is everywhere. Things are not looking great. Just being honest here. Outside of that, as far as some other stuff from the stream, I think they were talking a little bit about DLC sizes, that sort of thing. I'll be honest, just, again, as a PvP main and someone who does a lot of weapon reviews on their YouTube channel, I just wasn't super stoked by most of it. They just didn't show a lot that I was, really invested in. But listen, the new season starts, episode, whatever the hell you want to call it, starts next week. We'll see what happens. I'm trying to reserve too much judgment till we can actually get our teeth on some of this stuff. But we'll see. But to be perfectly honest, between learning about this and stuff like, no craftable seasonal weapons, my interest in Revenant, the excitement that I had for it, is rapidly starting to drain. But But again, we'll see. Anyway, Guardians, that's pretty much all for me tonight. Go ahead and follow my Twitch. I will be streaming Revenant prep over the next few days, so on and so forth. You know the drill when we get close to the end of seasons. Outside of that, leave me your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you think of all this. Do me a favor, you know, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button with the bell icon. You know the drill. Don't forget to check the description for my other links. For now, I will see you all in the next video. Peace, Guardians.